Hey. That means they're supposed to be off. Sorry about that. Good evening, and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting for August the 12th, 2024. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilmember William Mortland, and Councilmember Alan Sells. At this time, I'll now turn the meeting over to our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton. Mr. Knighton will explain how the meetings run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of city council meetings are to hear directly from residents on the items listed on the published agenda. And residents are at the top of the organizational chart for the city of Roswell. Therefore, public comments or questions are essential for mayor and council to incorporate as they contemplate each decision. If you would like to speak on an item, we ask that you fill out a comment card, which are located at the back of the room, in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. We ask that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which should be and is reflective of this great community. With respect to the proceedings, we ask that attention is given to the person speaking, and if it is necessary for anyone to have an independent conversation, we respectfully request that you exit the rear doors to the council chambers to the vestibule area. In addition, we ask that you silence any electronic devices at this time. The mayor is the presiding officer for the meeting and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. We encourage everyone in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. We also encourage you to review and participate in the various activities and offerings in the city of Roswell, which can be accessed at roswell365.com. There are a number of events upcoming in the city of Roswell which promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we all make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton, as always. At this time, I would like to call the Reverend Carrie Weatherford with the Roswell Presbyterian Church to the front for the invocation and moment of silence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. On behalf of Roswell Presbyterian Church, I bring you greetings and want to thank you all for your service. Let us pray. Holy and gracious God, as we gather tonight, help us to take a moment to reflect on the essence of our shared mission. We come together to serve and care for our vibrant Roswell community, a tapestry of diverse voices and aspirations. May our leaders be guided by wisdom in their decision-making, ever mindful of the needs and dreams of the people of Roswell. Help us to all work with creativity and imagination to envision solutions that address the challenges before us and to lead with innovation. Let us unite in our efforts, drawing strength from our collective purpose and fostering a spirit of collaboration. As we embark on tonight's discussions, may our actions reflect the commitment to enhancing the services that support and uplift our great city. Together, let us build a future where every decision contributes to the greater good and the unity of our community. Let us pause now for a moment of silence. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Carrie Weatherford of the Roswell Presbyterian Church. That was a beautiful prayer. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask United States Navy Aviation Machinist Mate, Second Class Fred Von Lunningham, to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
You all face the flag, repeat after me. I, Fred Van Nottingham, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Of aviation machinist mate Fred Von Loningham, I'm going to ask you to stay up there, and I'll ask the council to come down and join me for the first item under the mayor's report, which is the reading of a proclamation for the esteemed veteran of Roswell Award.
Thank you.
So just a little surprise, Fred is a World War II vet, just to let you know. So we're so honored that you're here with us tonight, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure, I can promise you that. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Aviation Machinist Mate, Second Class, Fred Von Loningham, esteemed veteran of Roswell. Whereas Fred Von Loningham, the youngest of 3 boys, of all whom enlisted with the enthusiastic support of his family and high school principal, bravely enlisted in the United States Navy at the young age of 17 on December 1st, 1942. And whereas Fred Von Loningham completed his basic training at the Great Lakes Training Center, demonstrating exceptional dedication and skill, and whereas he served with distinction as an aviation machinist mate second class, undergoing specialized training at multiple Naval Air Training Centers, including the prestigious Aerial Photography School, the Solid Fuel Rocket School, and Combat Air School. And whereas aviation machinist mate second class Fred Von Loningham received the Victory Medal and the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal in recognition of his valor and exemplary service. And whereas he served on CASU-49, Carrier Aircraft Service Unit, and CASU-12, providing critical support in Palu, Guam, the Mariana Islands, and the Pacific Theater, as well as serving as a tail gunner in a torpedo bomber, demonstrating exceptional bravery and dedication to his duties. And whereas after his military service, aviation machinist mate second class Fred Van Loningham pursued further education, studying mechanical engineering at Eastern Illinois University, becoming a member of the ASME while employed by Union Carbide, thereby continuing his commitment to excellence and personal growth. And whereas aviation machinist mate second class Fred Von Loningham honorably served in active duty until June 22nd, 1946, and continued his dedication to his country in the United States Naval Reserve until June 22nd, 1950. Whereas highest rank and title, aviation machinist mate second class, reflects his exceptional technical skill and steadfast commitments to his duties. And whereas aviation machinist mate second class Fred Von Loningham's service and sacrifice are further honored by the memory of his older brother Don, who was killed in Normandy, a reminder of the profound personal sacrifices made by military families. And whereas aviation machinist mate second class Fred Von Loningham exemplifies the qualities of courage, dedication, and service that are the hallmarks of esteemed veterans, contributing significantly to the freedom and security of our nation. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, Georgia, do hereby proclaim aviation machinist mate second class Fred Von Loningham an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and extend our deepest gratitude and admiration for his service, sacrifice, and steadfast commitment, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who serve the United States Armed Forces. Congratulations. Machinist mate Fred Von Lottingham, would you give us a few words?
Thank you so very much for all of this.
That's the best speech anybody's going to hear all night. All right. Do you mind if we get some pictures with you? Okay. Come on up, family.
Thank you.
This down there.
Don't have to tell. Share with everybody how special that is. Fred, you may want to stay. We're going to be here a couple more hours. Next on the mayor's report is the announcement of the appointment of Carolyn Gould to the Roswell Housing Authority. Carolyn, would you come forward so I can read the oath of office to you? Yes, ma'am. If you'll put your right hand on the Bible, and we're going to say a little oath. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm always not elegant at this. Forgive me. The oath of office, State of Georgia, County of Fulton, City of Roswell. I, Carolyn Gould,
I, Carolyn Gould,
solemnly swear or affirm,
solemnly swear or affirm, oh, it's both.
Sorry, that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Georgia,
of the State of Georgia.
and that I will in all respects
I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the provisions of the Charter,
and ordinances of the City of Roswell,
ordinances of the City of Roswell,
and I will well
and I will well
and truly perform the duties
perform the duties
of the office of Roswell Housing Authority,
of the office of Roswell Housing Authority,
and that I will to the utmost
and I will, to the utmost
of my skill and ability,
my skill and ability,
endeavor to promote the interest
endeavor to promote the interests
and property of said city
property of said city
without fear,
without fear,
favor, or affection.
favor, or affection.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thanks, sir.
All right, next on the mayor's report is a list of upcoming events in the city of Roswell. I'm going to ask my colleague, Councilmember Lee Hills, to make the announcements. Councilmember Hills.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wilson. As always, I want to remind you to check out Roswell365.com to see what's going on in your community and in our city. If you have anything that your local nonprofit or your neighborhood, your place of worship, any sort of community activity or group where you belong or participate, if you'd like to promote something, you can go and register for free an account and then load your information on there, and then that will also be searchable by our neighbors as they go peek around to see what's going on. And you can get some free publicity there. Also want to tell you that we're down to the 3 coolest Alive in Roswell's coming up. This Thursday will be one of the coolest, and I mean that in awesomeness. That is every third Thursday of the month from 5 to 9 downtown here on Canton Street. So be sure and stop in, meet some friends, see some old friends and new. It is free. We've got all sorts of treats, vendors, music, and of course, all of our fantastic brick and mortars selling food and beverage and all sorts of fun. Also want to point out, we've got our History Seek Saturdays. Hopefully you all have been paying attention to that this summer and maybe visited some of those. This one is at Smith Plantation, a Roswell legacy. This is August the 17th from 11 a.m. to 12:30 at the Roswell Library, right around the corner from here. And you can learn about the Smith family's history in Roswell at this History Seek Saturday. Archibald and Ann Smith moved to the colony of Roswell in 1838 from St. Mary's, Georgia. Their grandson, Arthur Smith, started the first library in Roswell, and it is the Smith family land on which the Roswell Library, Cultural Arts Center, and City Hall stand. Arthur and Mary Smith's great-nephew, Jim Skinner, will talk about how the Smith land was transferred to the city and about his family enduring the legacy in Roswell. After the presentation, walk next door to the Smith Plantation to tour the original house and outbuildings. It's a must-see. This is one time, and that is at from 11 to 12:30 on August the 17th. Also, this past weekend, if you missed it, you've got one more shot this weekend. There's a theatrical production at the Cultural Arts Center, Once Upon a Time. I believe Councilmember Johnson, I was about to say David, but Councilmember Johnson attended, and you're giving it 10 thumbs up? 10 thumbs up. Okay, so that is August 16th and 17th at 7:30 in the evening, or if you'd like to hit the afternoon, it's the 17th and 18th, the matinee at 2 o'clock. And you can get more information on that at www.intothewoodsgeorgia.com. That is the title of the production is, Once Upon a Time, and it's www.intothewoodsgeorgia.com. So check that out. You got a couple of opportunities this weekend. Also coming up, their summers just aren't going to end around here, thankfully. Sundays in the Park, a free outdoor concert series held at Riverside Park and Town Square on select Sundays, May through October, from 5:30 to 7:30. So this August 17th, this Sunday, is where you need to be to hear the beautiful music, light classics and beautiful music of the Roswell New Horizons Dogwood Brass Quintet. And then finally, Riverside Park, we've got every 4th Saturday. Most of you already know that because we're having record turnouts. And that is every 4th Saturday through September. So we have this one and one more, 7:30 on August 24th. This is the longest running free outdoor concert series highlighting various musical genres and original artists. Bring your chairs, blankets, friends, and enjoy this laid-back environment along the Chattahoochee River. This will be on the 24th, River Wireless, a folk quartet from Asheville, North Carolina, who brings a dose of folk rock and an artful approach to songwriting and arrangements. So again, if you missed any of that, you can rewind this online or go to Roswell365.com, search up what date you're looking for or what sort of entertainment, and you will find it right there. Back to you, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, G. Lee Hills. Before we go to the last item of the mayor's report, I just want to make a brief statement. So 2 weeks ago, we had an open mic night. And I want to just talk about a couple of things. One was, I didn't do such a good job. And I want to make clear that the council is not at fault for the scheduling or the calendar or the items that are put on the docket. It completely lies with me. So I want to be very clear that any fault along those lines lays with yours truly and not with any of the council members here. The second thing I want to say to you is that for the next year and 5 months, approximately, or 4.5 months that I'm in office, I will never put any other agenda item on an open mic night. And I'll also say that if for whatever reason, if there's an open mic night scheduled in the next year and 4.5 months while I'm mayor, and I have a conflict with it, I will reschedule it, and reschedule it with ample time so that everybody knows that the open mic night's moved, so that I can personally make sure that I attend it. I do want to say to you that, and I know that this is not going to be, a satisfaction, but for 2.5 years, you may or may not know, we've been working on an economic development strategy. And in year one, we developed a strategy. At the end of the year, I was not satisfied as what the city needed for the next 20, 30 years of its life. And so really, when we got back in the beginning of 2023, you saw the kind of the product that we've been working on for the year and a half, and I have been very anxious to get that in front of you. I've been very anxious to get in front of you because there's a lot about to happen in our city from an economic development perspective. And I didn't want to be guilty of not having that plan in front of you for you to look at it before things started happening. So my bad for putting it on the open mic night, nobody else's, and it won't happen again. I hear you loud and clear, and I thank you for that time. So thank you. All right. The last item on the mayor's report is a resolution to settle litigation involving 1054 and 1056 Alpharetta Street, and to preserve historic structure located on such property as an open-air pavilion. Would a council member like to present this item? Councilmember Johnson.
I also, before I present the item, I just want to thank my wife for getting married in late July, because we were on an anniversary trip on the last open mic night, and I wasn't here, so because of her desire to get married in the summer, I missed that meeting, and so I'm just kidding. This is a resolution to settle litigation involving 1054 and 1056 Alpharetta Street, and to preserve a historic structure located on such property as an open-air pavilion.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Is that, the item is now presented for comment from council. Does council have any comments or questions on the matter at hand? Very much. All right. At this time, I will take it to Roswell residents who would like to weigh in on the matter. Are there any Roswell residents who would like to weigh in on the resolution to settle litigation at 1054 and 1056 Alpharetta Street, and to preserve the historic structure located on such property as an open-air pavilion? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Julie, I acknowledged Janet first. Forgive me. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Russell. Julie, would you like, yes, ma'am. Julie Martin.
Hello, my name is Julie Martin. I live at 367 Jade Cove Drive. Please be patient with me. I had a concussion earlier this year, and sometimes I'm more with it than others, so please bear with me if I ramble. But I want to thank you all for reconsidering demolition of the open air of the Masonic Lodge Old Methodist Church. I support this resolution, and as I mentioned to Councilmember Hills, it's not my favorite idea. I am a preservationist, but I am pleased to be here and to hear this news and to support it. I think it'll be a great asset to that plaza. The roof will provide shelter from rain. The walls can help dampen sound and protect people from traffic. And it would be much better than a historical marker that says something great was once here. So thank you very much. I'm hoping that maybe sometime in the future, who knows how long from now, the building could be restored. And by retaining it as an open air pavilion, that possibility remains for the future, whether it's 40 years from now, 10 years from now. And I look forward to learning more. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Janet, yes, ma'am.
Janet Russell. I have mixed feelings about the Masonic Lodge, and I just want to let you know that I'm really sorry that the city decided to acquire the building at all. I think it should have been left to be just what it was and let the Masonic Lodge people take care of it. I don't think we need to invest $4 or $5 million in a building that's been sitting there for 100 years and letting the taxpayers fix it up. Not going to be any benefit to the parking garage that's right going to be next door, in my opinion. I'm glad the building's not going to be destroyed, but I don't like the fact that taxpayer money is going to now take over a building that's been basically just sitting there for 100 years. I don't know what the function will be or how an open-air pavilion is going to be of any assistance to people in a parking garage. By the way, you know I don't like the location of the parking garage. It should have been at the Wells Fargo Bank. You know that old saying, you have a test drive of a car when you buy it, before you buy it? We're test driving the parking lot over there right now because it's a parking lot. You should know that. It's very successful, the parking lot that's at the Wells Fargo Bank. So I really don't like the idea, and many people that I have spoken to are not happy that the city is going to spend millions of dollars on a building that has nothing to do with a parking garage. Now, I don't know if that's coming out of the parking lot money bond that we voted, some people voted for, but it kind of reminds me of when I was married. My husband was an F-100 pilot in Vietnam, and he used to tell me, we go out and strafe trees at night because if we don't use up all our bullets, we don't get any more. Kind of like the money you're getting. If you don't spend it, you might not get any more. So I just want you to know that I think we are wasting our money. We should have let the Masons control the building just like they have since 1952, and they could take care of it, and they could fix it up, or they can leave it the way it is. I don't think that's our responsibility at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Any other thoughts or comments from Roswell residents? Thank you very much. I will bring it back to council for thoughts, comments, and questions. Or thoughts? Councilmember Sells?
Couple things. Here it is. I think I certainly was on the camp of giving it back to the Masons, but I understand that that is no longer an option as we sit here tonight, so that is off the table. But, you know, I read, I want to read you a couple things. I'm a fan of Scalia, and he mentions in a book that I'm reading about every once in a while as a judge, you get to revisit a decision that and overturn a decision that you voted in a certain way before. And I was struck by his words, and he quotes a couple of these examples that I think are really pretty prescient. The first one is, this is a British jurist named Bromwell, and he says, he's extricating himself from the embarrassing situation of having to vote against what he actually voted for before. And he says, the matter does not appear to me now as it appears to have appeared to me then. And another one by a guy named Lord Westerbury, he says, I can only say that I am amazed that a man of my intelligence should have been guilty of giving such an opinion before. So every once in a while, you know, facts emerge. There is an awful lot to this story that I know is outside of the purview of all of us, quite frankly. And we've talked about some of the things that we learned after first encountering this decision. So I applaud the mayor. I appreciate the fact that we've had this opportunity to hear from all of you, and all of us have gotten lots and lots of emails about that, of course, as you know. So I applaud this. I mean, this is what governance is about. This is what local governance is about. I ran on, you know, local government, as Chesterton said, you want to keep it close enough you can kick it in the shin. Well, Jerry, you did a great job at that. So, so I am going to be voting for this.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Any other thoughts, comments from council? I'll wait until the end. Anything else, sir? You want to say something?
No, it's going to be.
Okay. All right, well, that being said, is there a motion on this resolution? Would you like to make a motion formally, sir?
Yes. This is a motion to approve the resolution to settle litigation involving 1054 and 1056 Alpharetta Street and to preserve historic structure located on such property as an open-air pavilion.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. A motion is made by Councilmember Johnson. Is there a second to that resolution? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All understand the resolution before them? Fantastic. All in favor of the resolution, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the resolution passes unanimously. Congratulations. All right, I have, thank you, yes. And then I guess with a little bit of dispensation of being mayor, I'm going to pass it on to a mayor that served the city for 20 years, Mayor Jerry Wood, to make a comment. So Mayor Wood.
Mayor Wilson, thank you for recognizing me, and thank you, council, for the vote you have taken, and Mayor, for the motion that you made. You've made a lot of citizens happy. I also recognize that you have not made every citizen happy. That's impossible in your job. Y'all have a very tough job. You criticize whatever decision you make. You hear from consultants, you hear from critics, you even hear from ex-mayors now and then. But if you listen to the citizens, I think you'll make the right decision. And tonight, I think you made the right decision. Now, going forward, this is just the beginning of the next phase of this. I pledge to you my support and the full support of the Save Roswell volunteers to raise money for this restoration. We've already raised a little bit. We're working with the Roswell Historic Society to accept donations, and for those citizens in the audience, you'll see more about that. And we also pledge to help the city in seeking to get this building placed on the historic register where it belongs. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Julie, I thought you were going to say it, but I'll say it. So one of the things that was very critical was there are 6 HABs designations in the city of Roswell. I thought there were 6. I thought this was 6 of 6. This is 5 of 5? I thought Holly was 5. No? Correct me, sorry.
Bullock Hall, Barrington, Mimosa, Holly Hill, which is called the old Lewis Place, and this building, Old Methodist Church, Masonic Lodge, so it's 5.
No Smith?
No Smith.
My bad. Sorry, so there's 5.
That's
Thanks for
5.
correcting me. Okay, my bad. So this is 5 of 5. So, and thanks to your leadership on this, so now the city has retained all 5 HABs structures that remain in Roswell. So, thank you.
Mayor, would you clarify what HABs is?
Julie, you're the expert. I'm gonna let you explain because you did it a little bit last week, but it comes better from you than from me.
Okay, again, please forgive me if I ramble. This is Julie. Historic American Building Survey was in the 1930s. It was Work Progress Administration program to employ unemployed architects, photographers, draftspeople across the nation. They were sent out to seek buildings of architectural and cultural merit. So the government sought out the structures. As I explained to Councilmember Hills, I do not know how they decided on the 5 in Roswell or how they found them. I would speculate they came to Atlanta and asked, where do we go? And so they inventoried those 5 structures. It's kind of striking what isn't on, like Smith or RPC Chapel. But yeah, it's really special that we have 5 and that we still have all 5.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. Thanks so much. All right, so just one further clarification, and I should have said this earlier, and I apologize. This gives us the freedom to now move forward. Where's Sharon Izzo? Sharon, I know you want to stand up tall, because this now gives Sharon the freedom to begin work on the parking garage. And so we're very excited about that, and that will begin immediately. The parking garage will be Project 1. The Old Methodist Church, the Masons Building, will be Project 2. So you're going to see, as you see, you're going to see work on the parking garage. When the parking garage is going to finish, then you're going to see a transition to the open-air pavilion work on the Old Methodist Church Masons Building. So just kind of FYI. So the church will be, the Methodist Church, the Masons Building, will be kind of left alone for the next 18 months while Sharon's team is working on the parking garage. All right. Thank you very much. All right. That is it for the mayor's report. Thank you, Mayor Wood. And so next is the consent agenda. Councilmember Beeson, did you have say, yes, ma'am?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to remove item number 4 on the consent agenda, approval of a resolution to accept 2024 CDBG allocations.
Yes, ma'am.
Off of consent onto regular agenda, and I'd also like to request staff to briefly explain the limitations behind where CDBG funds can be spent.
Okay, very good. So Councilmember Beeson has asked for approval of resolution to remove item 4. It's seconded by Councilmember Hall. All in favor of moving the item to the regular agenda, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. We're going to move item number 4 off the consent agenda, and there'll be a presentation by staff per Councilmember Beeson's request. So at this time, are there any other items on the consent agenda that deserve any comments, questions, or thoughts from council? Very good. Are there any Roswell residents, with the exception of item 4 that's now been removed, that would like to address any items on the consent agenda? Yes, sir.
Whitehall Way. I have a question on number 8. The amount of close to $1 million. On item summary, it says that the city will be reimbursed once the project is completed. The word reimbursed without a number, it could be dollars, it could be percentage, should be there, because we don't know how amount will you reimburse. Is this $1,000, $100,000, all the amount? So I think it should be documented here what kind of reimbursement we receive, because reimbursement without number have no value. And I think it should be put in the report what will, if you know how much we will be reimbursed.
I'm going to let the city attorney answer that question. Thanks, Roman.
So the cost of the water line, part of the project is $953,550, and that's the amount the city will be reimbursed by Fulton County when the project's done.
For the whole amount?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Roman.
maybe you can edit this whole amount.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Any other thoughts, comments on consent agenda items? Thank you very much. I'll now bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions on consent agenda items. Being that they're not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Would you say it for me, please, sir?
The motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Is there a second? Councilmember Johnson has made a motion to approve it, seconded by Councilmember Beeson. All in favor of approving consent agenda tonight, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the motion passes for consent agenda unanimously tonight. Thank you very much. All right, last, and now we go to the regular agenda, and that falls under community development. Councilmember Mortland, would you read the first item under community development? Oh, but, sorry, scratch. Let's go to item number 4 that we pulled off the consent agenda. Sorry, Sarah. And you've got a presentation, I think, from Deputy City Administrator Jeff Leatherman and our fantastic grants department. And let's just, would you do me a favor, Sarah? I'm going to let you read item 4 just to kind of introduce it to everybody.
Yes, this is, after being moved to the regular agenda, item number 4, previously from the consent agenda, approval of a resolution to accept the 2024 Community Development Block Grant CDBG allocations and submit the 2024 Annual Action Plan, AAP.
Thank you, Sarah.
Good. Yeah, we just wanted to give an overview of what the annual action plan is and options we have here. So the 2024 annual action plan, the annual action.
Charles, let everybody know who you are.
Sorry?
Let everybody know who you are.
Oh, I'm Charles Alford. I'm the grant specialist with the Grants Division in the City of Roswell. So the 2024 annual action plan, or annual action plan, is a plan we submit every year to HUD that identifies our intended use of the city's entitlement CDBG funds, our community development block grant funds that we get from HUD every year. It's an annual allocation. It basically identifies specifically what we're going to use the funds for in that program year. So it's a one-year thing. Let's see here. So, and the CDBG funds are aligned with our 2023-2027 consolidated plan. So we do a 5-year plan, which we did. We started in 2022 and finalized in 2023, which identifies the city's priority needs. There's a lot of community engagement there. The number one priority need from that plan, the 5-year consolidated plan, was improving affordable housing. And so with this 2024 annual action plan, we received $407,830 from HUD this year. Staff, I think it was on July 9th, we recommended splitting those funds 80% and 20%. The $327,000 would go to pay the year one of the Section 108 loan that is also up for public comment period right now. And then around 20% would go for CDBG administrative and planning costs, which is fair housing, advertising, and grants division staff members. This plan is due to HUD by August 16th, 2024. And we just want to stress that it only commits 2024 funds. So Mayor and Council will have an opportunity. It does not commit the city CDBG funds officially, even though philosophically we've discussed it and presented it. But we will have to come back every year to Mayor and Council to get a resolution to submit an annual action plan every single year, which will identify how we're going to use that year's program year funds, what projects and such. So let's see here. So the citizen participation and comments, like all our annual action plans through HUD, we have a 30-day public comment period. Our comment period for the 2024 annual action plan opened on July 12th, and it closed at 10 a.m. today, August 16th. The city did receive several comments about using a portion of the funds for repairs for the housing authority. Those included replacing appliances, mitigating mold, removing trip hazards, decreasing utility expenses, as well as completing some general maintenance items. The CDBG program, just so everyone's aware, can be used for a wide variety of activities. However, it's a 100-page kind of Code of Federal Regulations kind of book there. So the way we determine eligibility is on a case-by-case basis. And we need more information before we can determine if we could use CDBG funds for any of these activities. Some of them are technically eligible, but the devil's in the details, so to speak. So I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Charles. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions for Charles? Tara, yes, ma'am.
So you've recapped the list based off the input that we received over the last week and then via email as it relates to potential renovations in RHA. Based on that, you said that it would be on a case-by-case basis. Would more time necessarily buy you what is needed in order to determine if this is a case-by-case situation that would be applicable for those funds, or at this time, would those funds not be applicable?
We have to turn in the annual action plan to HUD on August
16th.
August 16th. I'm sorry, the 30-day public comment period is incorrect here. Public comment period ended on August 12th, which is today. We have to turn it in by Thursday, August 16th, I believe. And if we don't turn it in by then, we're going to lose the funds.
Got it. So if it's not turned in within 4 days, I mean, we completely lose out on $407,830 that would be used towards it. And then with that being said, given the plan that we're currently submitting, does that restrict us from future use, from using those funds towards these needs, if they're applicable?
Using these 2024 funds or 2025 funds?
2024, 2025, or I know in the past, we've had programs resubmit funds that they were not able to use, past funds that were not allocated.
Right. We can amend the annual action plan through a substantial amendment. This doesn't restrict us to what we're going to do with 2025 or 2026, but the plan can be amended, allowable by HUD.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Anything else, ma'am? Okay. Council? Any thoughts, comments, or questions for Charles? Jeff, anything else you wanted to add? Okay, very good. Charles, thank you, sir, very much. At this time, I will ask Council any general thoughts, comments, or questions before I turn it over to Roswell residents. Very good. Any thoughts, comments, or questions on this particular matter at hand from any Roswell residents? Yes, ma'am.
Plant. I live at 100 Lake Pines Court. If these funds aren't used for mitigating mold and fixing appliances and all the things that we heard about, or I heard about during open mic night, will those issues be addressed through other manners? Can we find money to help these people?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks, Kat, for asking that question. I know all of you have weighed in on this. Probably all of you would like to address this. So I'm going to let you guys address Kat's question. It's a very good question. So, David, I just looked at you first. Sorry, Sarah. Yes, sir?
When I first got elected, Councilman Beeson and I toured, I guess that's the right word, some RHA housing, and I don't think anyone is going to be shocked by what we found there. With that said, you know, I hope in the future that, you know, if we can use some funds to take care of this in the future, I'm 100% on board, right? But I don't think we need to go at like you know, Jeff, I'm going to steal your words, a whack-a-mole policy where we try to take care of this one little problem, one little problem, one little problem. We need to, as a city, get a big plan, know what's going on in this housing. How do we attack it and attack it thoroughly? This funds for this period in time, we don't really have the time to get that plan before that. So I'm okay with what we're doing here tonight. I think next year when we get these funds, if we need to be replacing appliances and mitigating mold, and we have the federal government approval, or it's within the code of how to use these funds, and I think that's something we should look into.
Sarah, yes, ma'am.
I'm going to go ahead and preface this with, I realize this is a point of frustration for many, including myself, but a friendly reminder that Roswell Housing Authority, despite its name, is not part of the city of Roswell. Roswell Housing Authority is its own quasi-governmental entity that exists separate from the city of Roswell. And I know what you're thinking. We were literally just sitting here 30 minutes ago when you swore in a board member for the Roswell Housing Authority. That's the extent of which the city has oversight over the Housing Authority, is by being able to, through the mayor only, not through council, but through the mayor appointing members of the Housing Authority to provide some level of oversight. That being said, as Councilmember Johnson said, I know that not only he and myself, but other members of council, as well as the mayor, are very familiar with the issues and the ongoing issues that have been going on at Roswell Housing Authority that predates most of us sitting up here on the dais. It's also something that every single person up here has spent a lot of hours and time in trying to work and find ways that we can better support residents of Roswell Housing Authority. Doing a little bit of digging myself over the past couple weeks since we did receive some of those comments, and I've had ongoing conversations with some residents, looking at the mitigating the mold issues. I know this again is going to come as a point of frustration to many. The mold reports that I have seen myself, those have come up clean so far. So we haven't seen anything where there actually is a call for concern that would need mitigation on those issues. That being said, all those calls for concern would go through the Roswell Housing Authority, which is actually part of a federal entity, not a city entity. So that would go through HUD, and the full recourse of action would go that way. That being said, while they are not technically a city entity, I'm fully supportive of ways that we can better support our residents through, as Councilmember Johnson said, either those are funds, make sure it's the best and highest use of our CDBG funds, and keep in mind, the CDBG funds in this situation, I know the others are ready to throw a binder at my head because I'm rambling. The CDBG in this situation, the repayment of that Section 108 loan, that's not just a kicks and giggles loan. That's a loan that was taken out in order to be able to completely demolish, rehab, refurbish, and rebuild entirely new housing on the site that is going to be top of the line and not something from the 1960s and 70s, which was previously there and needed to be condemned. And as Councilmember Hills has previously said as well, the original residents who were in that housing will be given the right of first refusal to be able to claim that housing, as well as those who are existing Roswell Housing Authority residents. So that is high priority right now. That is phase one. I anticipate, hopefully with the support of the rest of Mayor and Council, a phase 2 where we continue to refurbish, rehab, and rebuild Roswell Housing Authority's housing to be able to provide not only substantially better, but good living conditions for our Roswell Housing Authority residents. So again, keep in mind, while CDBG in the past has not always necessarily been used to support RHA, which has been a major criticism of mine, I do appreciate that the funds this time are going towards specifically RHA and improving that housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, sir. David? Yes, sir.
And I just want to piggyback on Councilwoman Beeson's comment. I think all of us, all the electeds here, are, we have a frustration level too. You might not see it on the forefront, but the conversations that we have about what's going on at RHA is on our minds. It's very, I can't publicly disclose what I said, but in a private meeting, I think my passion for this was heard loud and clear. And so, our hands are tied on this a little bit, and we just need some patience and some help.
Leah, did you want to say something? All right. Ellen? No?
You need me to?
No. Christine? Yeah? Yes?
Let me just say this. I think what they're trying to say is we have the authority to suggest, but we don't have the authority to control. And that's a frustration for us and for you. And we will use our influence as best we can to make this the best outcome we can for our Roswell residents. And I think everybody agrees that rebuilding that building has got to be a top priority. So I believe that's where we are. We have the ability to suggest, but not the ability to control.
Let's talk about what we can do. And I want to mention that because I think that's very important. Talk about what we can do. So one of the things we can do, when we got into this, we realized we had a very competent executive in Beth Brown that was who runs the Gainesville Housing Authority and also runs Norcross. Lee, what's the other one besides us? Two more. So Beth has been a very experienced professional kind of over the Housing Authority. HUD's complicated. Everybody knows that. As you probably know, we had Senator Ossoff here just 3 months ago doing a Senate subcommittee hearing to expose the challenges of what's happening in much of HUD housing across the state of Georgia. The city of Roswell was not on that issue, and I'm not telling you that's a good thing or a bad thing. It just wasn't. Because I will tell you that myself, along with the aforementioned council members, Christine as well as Lee, as well as Will, have all been personally involved in trying to improve things at the Housing Authority. And those are just words, and they don't mean anything. But I will tell you what we did from an action standpoint. What we did was something that was unprecedented. That's why you just heard Sarah mention this loan. This loan is basically a $2 million, it's an addition of $2 million to a capital stack for a developer to be incentivized to put new housing. So my charge, our charge, which I believe is in concordance and in accordance with the rest of the Roswell residents, is that if we have a housing authority, that there are a couple things that need to happen. One is that the housing not just be good, but it be pristine. The first thing is that the housing that we build in the Housing Authority, if we can have anything to say about it, then we're going to make it pristine housing. So we've done that. But this project is coming on by basically putting $2 million into the capital stack. That's unprecedented. The second thing, as we said, is that, and by the way, under Mr. Knighton's leadership beginning last year, and Mr. Leatherman's leadership last year, is we began a very aggressive campaign throughout the rest of the city to say that there is going to be no substandard housing, period, anywhere in the city of Roswell, especially in the private marketplace, right? So we understand that by the extension, that means also the Housing Authority. So last year, I will remind my fellow residents that if you remember, with limited power and scope, thanks to the ingenious thinking of the senior team, Randy and the team, we saw a building that was in disrepair in the Housing Authority. And again, we don't have the authority to tell the Housing Authority, the HUD, what to do. So we thought we did the one thing we could do as a city. We said, we're concerned this building is going to collapse and that 31 people who live in this city are going to die, literally. So we condemned the building. And then we aggressively, underneath the leadership of Lee Hills, helped move 29 of the 31 residents, thank you, Beth, in a very short period of time. And it took a lot of leadership. And so what I want to share with you is, and by the way, if there's mold, if there's sewage, if there's bugs, if there's anything not acceptable, don't care if it's a housing authority, don't care if it's private housing, this council, this senior leadership team is going to do whatever it takes to rectify those situations. And what I am going to ask, and I think you probably mentioned it last 2 weeks ago, so Sarah, Will, Christine, David, Alan, and Lee, and Mr. Knighton, what I would like us to do is to do a report on what's going on with the Housing Authority, whether that's a workshop, whether that's from the dais, where it's a 30-minute presentation. I'd like us to bring up to speed. There's a lot of things that need to be talked about, because I don't think, sometimes just one narrative gets put out there. Because I will tell you, like, one of the things that I do say with a little pride, one of the things about our Housing Authority, and Beth, you tell me if I'm wrong, is that it's a safe place to live. Our Housing Authority in the city of Roswell is a safe place to live. You can't say that about housing authorities through many places in the state of Georgia. And but what I can also say is that you have my commitment, as well as the commitment from this council, that if there's mold, if there's insects, if there's sewage issues, if there's anything that's substandard, we will do everything in our power and beyond to rectify that for our Roswell residents who live in the Roswell Housing Authority. So that's my thoughts on the comment. All right. I appreciate your time on the matter. Were there any other residents that wanted to talk about the issue? Because I brought it back to council, but I know I just got through talking, so I don't know if anybody say anything else. Give fairness. Yes, ma'am. Beth. Yes, ma'am. By the way, Beth, everybody doesn't know who you are. You're a special guest. Thank you for being with us tonight. We're honored to have you.
Thank you for hearing me out here. I'm just here to...
Beth, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Beth Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Gainesville Housing Authority, as well as the Roswell Housing Authority here. We've been managing the Housing Authority for the past 5 years. And at the time that we took over, HUD was threatening to come in and take over. So we've had a lot of obstacles facing us. First and foremost, what is a long-term plan here? And that was to redevelop. The housing that's left was built in the mid-1950s. It's almost 70 years old. We are doing our best to keep up with the maintenance needs that you see there. But it's beyond our budget. It's beyond our replacement reserves that we have there. So the pathway forward to saving the Housing Authority is redevelopment. In the past 4 months, we've spent $30,000 on HVAC repairs and replacement. We spent $12,000 on stoves, refrigerators, and other appliances. And so I would invite, we had a third party come and inspect all of the units about 4 weeks ago, and we're working through the repair list, but there were no major health and safety violations that were there. We're not perfect. There are issues and outstanding work orders, and we might not get to them. Sometimes with the age of the unit, it takes us to go back 2 and 3 times in order to really figure out what the problem is, or we might try a less expensive alternative and realize that's not going to work and have to go back. So we're working through those issues there, but the 108 loan, it's $2 million that's going to leverage $30 million in development funds to build 102 units. That's going to replace 53, not just the 40, but 52, another 12 units out of the family site. And all I can say is that that's what the 108 program was designed to do, was for you to take your CDBG funds that come out in these smaller increments and make a larger impact with those funds coming through this one consolidated loan. And that's what we're going to see. It's going to be the catalyst for the revitalization of that community. And so I thank you for all of your support that you've given the Housing Authority. Our meetings are open to the public. They're every second Tuesday at noon in room 220 here. Anybody is welcome to attend those meetings. I also invite any of the council members who want to meet me, if they want to take a tour of the property, they want to go look in any of the units, with 48 hours notice, we can get you into any of the units, and we're happy to do so. Just reach out to me and let me know. If you want to understand a little bit better about the Housing Authority and how it operates, happy to do that as well. But we got the long game in mind here, and we're just working towards that pathway. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Beth. Any thoughts, comments, or questions for Beth while she's there? Beth, thank you for your yeoman's work. We know what you've done, and just like you said, 5 years ago when you took it over, it was a tough stead, and particularly from a financial perspective, and it's still a tough stead financially on the federal side. And to your point, the path forward for the long game for the Roswell Housing Authority is redevelopment with new projects. And like you said, thank you for saying that there's the $2 million that's leveraging $30 million for brand new development of 102 units in the Housing Authority, which is going to go to Roswell people, which is very important. Thank you. I saw, Gail, did you want to get up and say something? Okay. I'm breaking my protocol here, so I'm a little lost. So welcome, Gail. Tell everybody who you are and where you live.
My name is Gail Bohannon McCoy. I live at 736 Wood Street, Roswell, Georgia. I just want to say almost thank you to the mayor and council for at least listening to us on open mic night. Roswell Housing Authority has been there for a very long time, and we just keep putting Band-Aids on it. I know it needs money to do some things, but some of those things there could be done now, such as ceilings, something with the mold. And I know the residents there sometimes are not cooperative. I know, I've been there, worked there, I understand that. But for the safety of some of those, I think some things can be done right now. And I think there's something that's called the Georgia Safe at Home Act. House Bill 404 applies to all rental properties, including those that are HUD housing. The act establishes a minimum standard of habitability that requires landlords and property owners to provide tenants with safe, healthy, and habitable rental housing. So I think as we go forward, I appreciate what Beth has said. I've worked with Beth. But the safety of some of those with the ceilings, because I was there when some ceilings have come down and we just got people out in the nick of time. So I think some things need to be addressed right now. And for CBG funding, I'm not sure about that one, how it's being handled. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more investigating. And I also did go on HUD records as far as those apartments being inspected by HUD. I don't know when the last time they have been inspected by HUD. So those are some of the things that I feel like if they're in my community, if I was on the council, I would make sure that some things are being done, because Roswell is supposed to be a good place to live. And right now we are not showing, according to the Roswell Housing Authority, is a good place to stay. And people stay there because some of them can't do any better. If we had good paying jobs in Roswell, maybe we could do better. And I understand some don't want to do better. So I get both sides of it. But I do appreciate you all listening. And I do appreciate you all going to be the watchdogs over the Housing Authority now to make sure things are getting done as they should be done, because somebody needs to be held accountable.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Gail. Any other thoughts, comments from Roswell residents? Thanks so much. I just want to add one comment, just for historical perspective. It took the courage of Lee Hills, Christine Hall, Will Mortland. It was only 5. Mike Palermo and Peter Vanstrom at the time to change the CBG funding. We have amazing charities in Roswell. I think most people know that. We have the Drake House Homestretch, Family Promise, Star House, just on and on. We have these great charities. But the CBG funding in the past was going to these great charities. And it was really thanks to Lee's and Christine's and Will's and Peter's and Mike's courage to make the transition to say, look, we got a housing authority and we got to start putting CBG funds. And Charles, thanks for helping to make that happen internally, to start using the CDBG funds for the housing authority. And that happened really 2 years ago. It took a lot of courage. I can remember how much flack Lee and Christine and Will got for doing that, because it was these amazing charities in Roswell were like, but we were used to getting that money, and we had to say, look, we think it probably fits better in the Roswell Housing Authority. I remember that they got killed politically for doing that. So just FYI, this group has been making a very discernible effort towards the Housing Authority. All right, thanks, guys, very much. I appreciate it. All right, there is a motion. Yes, sir. Yes. Councilmember Morthland, this item falls under your purview. Would you like to make a motion, sir?
Motion to approve the resolution to accept the 2024 Community Development Block Grant allocations and submit the 2024 Annual Action Plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. This is seconded by Councilmember Johnson. All in favor of approving item number 4 pulled off the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Yes, ma'am.
Real quick comment, voting in favor of it, but with the understanding that per Mr. Alford and the clarity that you provided, that in the future, if there's anything that can be changed or amended or applicable for these funds, we do have the ability to submit an amendment to whatever we're voting on now. Is that correct?
100%. You always have that. You have that.
You have the ability to amend.
You have that authority.
Okay, I'm
ability.
good. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. All right. So all in favor of item number 4 pulled off the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the item number 4 passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Will, I apologize, sir. First item underneath community development is yours. Would you read the first item, please, sir?
Item number 1 under the regular agenda is the text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 13, Administration, Section 13.4.3. Who can submit an application? Letter E, presented by Jackie Dybel. This is the first reading.
Oh, and I'll tell you, our city attorney, who was not present 2 weeks ago as well, gets to read this item.
I had COVID. Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code by modifying Article 13, Administration, Section 13.4, Legislative Review. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend Article 13, Administration, Section 13.4, Legislative Review, Section 13.4.3, who can submit an application of the Unified Development Code, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this is the first reading.
Welcome, Jackie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a first reading for text amendment to 13.4.3. Background here, this went to the Administrative Recreation and Parks and Finance Committee on May 14th. It was heard by the Planning Commission on July 16th. This is the first reading tonight. The second reading has been advertised and scheduled for the 26th of August. This is the current code as stands. We're talking about letter E, number 1, when we make the changes. So currently, the way it reads is multifamily shall be allowed as a conditional use in the following locations within the city of Roswell. And number 1 states on a parcel of property which borders Georgia State Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or Highway 92. The remainder is not changing. What was initiated and moved forward is under who can submit an application, letter E, to be amended as any parcel of property which borders Georgia State Highway 9 or Georgia 140 east of Highway 9 or Highway 92. And then it added such parcels required to have 51% of of the square footage of the development as non-residential uses. Give you a little bit of an understanding, this is the areas along Highway 92, Georgia Highway 9, and Georgia 140 East. This is just a close-up of 92, Georgia 140, Highway 9 north of Holcomb Bridge Road, Highway 9 south of Holcomb Bridge Road. These are just parcels along the road. To give a little background as to why this one's being done, in 2020, the Mayor and Council adopted the ordinance related to the CX Commercial Mixed Use District to require 51% of the square footage of development to be commercial/retail. This proposed text amendment brings the rest of the parcels located on the corridors to require the 51% requirement to make it consistent with the other one that was adopted in 2020. This item was heard by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval with one change. They indicated to insert the words total building in front of square footage of the development as non-residential uses. So they would like to see that language added to the text amendment. Staff does recommend approval of the first reading of the text amendment with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Do you have any questions for staff?
Thanks, Jackie. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions for Jackie?
I will inevitably have a comment, but I'll just wait and get it out of my system at the end.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Jackie, thank you. I'm sure you never know, right? Any thoughts, comments, or questions from council, generally speaking? Being they're not, are there any Roswell residents would like to weigh in on this matter? Being that they're not, I bring it back to council for any last thoughts, comments, or questions. Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Beeson.
Here we go. Even though this is the first reading, we've technically already heard this item during initiation as well as during committee when it was originally introduced. This goes back all the way to 2022 before I even ran for office. Some of these thoughts that I have on this change and the reason why I oppose it. Myself and several others from the city of Roswell, including some of my fellow elected officials, attended a conference last week in one of our neighboring cities. And one of the big focuses of the conference was housing. One of the big focuses as well was creating mixed-use types of developments, neighborhood developments. But part of the housing portion that was discussed at this conference was missing middle housing, which is highly needed not only just in Roswell or the northern suburbs, the northern metro Atlanta area, but in many parts of the country. And one of the speakers, who was from the American Enterprise Institute, highlighted that what precludes many municipalities from having not only mixed-use development, but this missing middle type of development, which is smaller forms of housing that are more accessible for your young professionals or your workforce, is having a highly restrictive code. And they emphasize types of code restrictions in their development code that would preclude this type of development. And this, in my opinion, is a prime example of that because it's overly restrictive in its development code. So in the interest of promoting mixed-use development, I'm opposed to this ordinance change and would like to remind folks that Avalon, Halcyon, et cetera, they can never be built under this code change, which means that we'd be precluding ourselves from that type of development with this change moving forward. So with that, I am opposed and remain opposed.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Councilmember Sells?
You know, those who were here last time for the open mic night, and we did have a presentation on economic development, and in particular, in the last half of that presentation, there was a significant, I would say, recitation of the facts about the housing stock in Roswell, that it is primarily prior to 2000. A lot of it is even older than that, 1990 and older. And it's, we have a great risk of it becoming highly rental property capable and turning over as rental property. And that's going to drive property values down. So anything that makes that more likely, anything that drives down property values is something we should look very, very hard at. And when we build the high-density apartments like we're building in East Village, it drives down the property values around it, and that's a real problem. So from an economic development point, we need to start thinking about that, because one of the goals that at least I have, and I believe others share, is that we would love to have a zero millage rate in Roswell. And the only way we're going to do that is by driving economic development in Roswell, and that's not apartment development.
Thank you, Councilmember Sales. Councilmember Hills.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also attended the Quality for Growth seminar last week, and one of the gentlemen speaking was emphatic about enabling by right zoning, allowing greater density in lots of areas, particularly around walkable and amenity-rich areas, which is prime real estate, and implement short and simple land use rules, fast permitting, and less expensive building standards. Did I mention in prime real estate areas? So what this gentleman was suggesting was really driving down some of our most precious resources in this city. He wasn't speaking to me living in Roswell, but he was speaking to the masses and was emphatic about it. So while I appreciate your perspective, Councilmember Beeson, I disagree with that completely. And the reason that we are imposing this 51%, let's not forget, we have the right to make those changes if we need to, or we see the development going in a way that's going to be responsible. But we're in this mess already because Fulton County unincorporated built like crazy on the east side. I mean, I don't know how we got as much as we did across the city, but there was no governor, no foot on the brake, nothing going on the east side of Roswell, which wasn't even Roswell then. So this is a preventative measure so that we can take our time and make sure that we're making very good decisions on what kind of development's going on, which is not what I would characterize as the target, now known as East Village property. I hope it's great, but I'm feeling for my east people. So this to me is just, I mean, I took away a lot from that meeting on Friday, a lot. And it speaks to exactly how we got into the mess that we are in right now with a third of our city being apartments. And a lot of them, what we were talking about, the mayor mentioned earlier, making sure that those, all quality of life is protected here. And we're unable to touch much of those because irresponsible development was going on where we've got REITs out of town, out of state, out of mind, out of sight. I don't care what's going on in those apartment buildings. And it's like a glass tower over there with barbed wire. We can't get in there and do anything about it. I know Mr. Knighton's been working hard on trying to find a loophole so that we can get some people some relief. I haven't heard this summer, but I know last summer there were people from different apartment complexes across the city of Roswell. Their AC was going down, and this wasn't the housing authority. This was apartments in the city of Roswell, east and west. So this is a big deal. And it's a way to protect what people have lived here a long time or just moved here. Protect your property, my property, your property, each one of you up here, everybody listening to this. It's a big deal. So the reason people want to live here is because there have been protections in place to look after our properties here. And we're finally in a position where we're developing responsibly, and there will be housing developed soon, you'll see. So it's not like we're not doing any, but I just feel it's necessary to add my thoughts on that because I took away some different nuggets from the, I forget what the name of that was called, the Council for
Quality Growth.
That's the one. Thank you for indulging me.
Thanks, Julie. David? Yes, sir. Councilmember Johnson?
Me and my button are going to have a battle one day. I am voting for this tonight, and the main reason why I'm voting for this is because it is a standardization of the code across East and West Roswell. As Councilman Hills has stated, East Roswell is a different beast than, Parkway Village on the west side. That said, I'm not loving having what I would call an arbitrary number in the code, and I hope that in the future, as we begin to economically develop the city the way that we want, our code gets looked at, and we change our code so that it is, I don't mind our code being restrictive. I just want it to be clear. And I want to make sure that we can grow responsibly as a city.
Let me just take that opportunity to introduce everybody to somebody who's been introduced previously, who has this incredibly terrible job ahead of her, our Community Development Director, Michelle Alexander. Michelle, stand up so everybody will know who you are. So this amazing human being has been charged with one, she's already taken over ComDev and is doing an amazing job with the team. Our code is a mess. It's been a mess. It was a mess the night it got passed. It continues to be a mess. It's not clear. And one of the things that we will do in the future, I believe, but there are things, the economic ED is actually ahead of it because the council has the authority given to it by its residents to do certain things individually on projects. And so that's very important to matter. This is definitely a guideline, putting guidelines in place. But Michelle Alexander will be leading the charge on the team for building a new code in the future, because a new code does need to be built for the city. But you're probably saying, why aren't we doing it now? Why aren't we doing it now? We have this conversation all the time. And the reality is bandwidth. Bandwidth to do, but because there's so much going on from an ED side, that doing a code at the same time simultaneously of all the projects on the ED side would be not very efficient and very effective. But we will change this code. The second thing is, I just want to remind everybody, is there's 44 square miles in Roswell. And what this council and senior leadership team is responsible for in its governorship is those 44 square miles. And there is no question, and all of us know, that affordable housing is an issue, workforce housing is an issue. But I will tell you that the center point of gravity for the economic strategy for the city of Roswell for the next year and 5 months that I remain mayor of this city is what I call the 120,000 model. And I think that's very important, because the model built for the city by bigger agencies outside the city of Roswell was basically a $250,000 model. And so I would say to you as a resident, what I believe that most residents do not want is for this city to become 250,000, 200,000 people. They don't see that in their best interest from a quality of life perspective. They don't see that in their best interest from an infrastructure perspective. And they don't see that in their best interest from an investment perspective, i.e. the value of their personal property or their commercial property. So one of the things that takes you back to the economic plan, again, that's just very elegant, intricate, long and detailed. And remember, the car's still driving and the car's still being put together. But what's so important about that plan is it's built around a model of having 120,000 people in this city in 20 years, not 250,000. And the reason we believe that's so important is we believe that has a significant return, even in comparison to our sister cities, on exponential returns on both personal property and commercial property, let alone the economic dynamics that are going to come out from the city, from a taxation revenue, from an alternating revenue strategy in terms of how income comes into the city and how wealth is created in the city, and lifting boats throughout the city. And there's a number of plans is exactly like that. Anybody has a complaint about, hey, look, the housing's not good enough, then it's our job to be a part of the solution, making sure the housing is good enough. And you're going to see sophisticated plans come out about redevelopment in the future. But that is another phase. The first phase is we have to create the pincer movement, which is what Conley saw Peter put on the map 2 weeks ago, which is creating key economic development, strategic economic development at certain places to basically catalyze economic development around it. So, sorry, I didn't mean to, I got under, but to the 51, I hear you. But what I would remind everybody is you're ultimately going to make the decision, council, on each development. So, but I hear the arbitrary, I hear the complaints with the code, 100%. We know we're going to get that fixed. But in the meantime, this is, as David said, it's to basically create unanimity with both the east and the west side of the city of Roswell. Sorry. So yes, for Councilmember Beeson.
Real quick point on clarity. I heard one of my favorite phrases, which is by right zoning. Just a reminder to my fellow elected officials that this change to the UDC is not necessarily going to be changing that either. Right now, it's already conditional. So any type of development without this change already comes to us as mayor and council to determine if it's conditionally approved and if it meets those conditions, which conditions we want to have in place if we so choose to approve it. It also gives us the ability to flat out deny it. And that applies to, I believe, nod or shake your head no, Jackie, to every single parcel along that development. Without this change, it would still be conditional, correct? Sorry, I invoked Jackie, who is a walking encyclopedia of our Unified Development Code.
So if it's residential and includes apartments or condominiums, then yes, those are all considered conditional within the code today, so they would be coming before the mayor and council.
Thank you. So by no means would anything happen by right in those situations. And then I 100% agree with the rest of my elected officials. We do need economic development here in Roswell. That said, I don't know in the history of economic development that any corporation or business has ever targeted a community based off of how great their golf course was or how many square miles they had necessarily within the city limits. Rather, they're trying to see how much available housing there is for their potential workers, or if there is a target demographic of their target workers within that market already. And so the only reason why I emphasize, in this case, the young professionals and the workforce housing is I do worry about it precluding us in the future from that economic development and that growth as it relates to being able to target young professionals and recent graduates and those who are 35 and under within this market, because it's otherwise very difficult for folks to relocate here. That's it.
Thanks, Sarah. Councilmember Sells?
So first of all, I think one of the objectives here was to wave off people wasting a bunch of time, bringing deals that we weren't going to approve. And so we were sending a clear signal to the market that, look, if you're going to come here with 60, 70% residential, highly dense apartments, you're wasting your time. And so I think that's a benefit. This is a signal to the market that that's not what we want. And secondly, you know, as we think about, we're not going to be building manufacturing in Roswell. So when you start talking about housing for that kind of level of 250,000 people, that's not what's going to be built here. This is going to be much more high-tech, much more skilled infrastructure. Those kinds of things are what we're bringing to Roswell because they generate the revenue that can someday make it so that we can indeed have a zero millage rate in Roswell, which is the goal. So there you go.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Councilmember Sells. So if the intent and the purpose of this change is to indicate to the market that we are not interested in 60 to 70% residential mixed-use properties, are we saying that we're not interested in Halcyon? Are we not interested in Avalon? Because those are the percentages for those types of properties in development.
That's a great question. We'll call you Miss Segway. So the answer, of course, is that we as a city, for the first time, at least in my experience, are actually going out and finding businesses. So we're going to attract the types of businesses we want. We're not waiting to see who shows up at the ComDev window. So the plan, as you well know, you're a part of all of these conversations, is quite aggressive in terms of the value that we're building. And housing is certainly a part of that, and we'll look at those. But it's not having someone show up at the window with the plan that we react to. It's that we're out actively seeking to attract quality employers to Roswell.
Thank you, Alan. Sarah? All right. Well, Christine, you guys weighing in because everybody else has. I just want to make sure you guys.
No, Will has a 30-minute diatribe.
Okay, fair enough. So, any other thoughts, comments, questions from council? Thanks so much. Councilmember Morthland, would you like to make a motion, sir?
Yes, sir. Motion to approve text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Article 13, Administration, Section 13.4.3, who can submit an application, letter E, along with the verbiage recommended by the Planning Commission, add the language total building before square footage in the text amendment.
Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. Is there a second to the motion?
There's a second by the council member who gets to look at East Village every day of his life.
Seconded by Councilmember Sells. All understand the motion in front of you, the text amendment to UDC. Please raise your hands if you're supporting the resolution by Councilmember Morthland and seconded by Councilmember Sells. All opposed, please raise your hands. Sorry. All right, let the record show that the vote is 5-1. Thank you very much. The first reading passes. The second reading will be on August 26th. Councilmember Morthland, would you read the second item under community development?
Second item is 2024. 2024-2144. This is address 330 Brown Drive, Metropolitan River Protection Act, presented by Kristen Thomsenberger.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My
Hi,
name is
Kristen.
Kristen Thomasberger. I'm a planner too in the Planning and Zoning Division. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting to you application 2024-2144, 330 Brown Drive, and they are requesting a Metropolitan River Protection Act approval for the construction of a single-family home. Just a little background on MERPA. Any plan that comes in for a property that is within the Atlanta Regional Commission River Corridor has to be sent down to ARC, where it says all land disturbing activity in the corridor must be reviewed, approved and certified for consistency with corridor plans and standards. And then your part is what we're doing tonight. After a project has been certified, the local government will monitor its development for conformance to the approved review. When this application came in, it went for review between staff, and once it was approved by our engineering department and planning and zoning, it was sent down to ARC. This is a map of the City of Roswell River Corridor. The section in blue is everything that would fall under the River Corridor Protection Act. And then the inlay at the top is just a zoomed in section, and the star is the property that we're going to be speaking about tonight. This is an aerial of 330 Brown Drive. And then the zoning map, it is zoned RS12, which is single family. This is a site plan of the proposed single family home. And then this is the erosion control plan along with the ARC category analysis. This particular property has two different vulnerability categories, Category C and Category D. After sending this to ARC, the finding was that ARC staff has completed its review of the application for a MERPA certificate for this proposed project in the Chattahoochee River Corridor. ARC's finding is that the project is consistent with the Chattahoochee River Corridor Plan. Staff recommendation is that we recommend approval of application RC 2024-2144. The applicant is here if you have any questions for him or if you have any questions for me.
Kristen, great job. Thank you very much. Does council have any thoughts, comments, or questions for Kristen? Thank you very much. At this time, does the council have any questions or comments regarding this matter outside of any comments for Kristen? Does the applicant wish to make a statement? You're a smart man.
I'm Steve Rowe with AEC 50 Warm Spring Circle, Roswell, Georgia.
How you doing, brother?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, sir.
I'm just here to answer any questions you might have. It's a fairly straightforward, simple application.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Do any Roswell residents have any thoughts, comments, or questions? Ernie, yes, sir. Welcome. Thanks, Ernie, for being here. Introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are and where you live, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Ernie Geyer, 437 Jones Drive, which borders this property here. I'm not necessarily opposed to the single-family development, but has anybody seen this property, where it's located? Visually gone out there? Looked at it? Have you?
Yes.
Okay. Access to that property by the gravel road from Jones Drive, is that the only access to that property?
The access, yes, sir.
Okay. I think somebody ought to go out there and look at it before you move forward. And I think this is premature. I think ARC has to approve it, and then it goes to the, I guess there's another approval process. But this property is located at the end of a gravel driveway. It's not a road. It's probably 10-foot wide gravel. And what borders this gravel road is the two women in the back there, the young elderly women, young, and that's their access to their house. Now, that house was built probably in the 30s, okay? At the end of this driveway is this property, this lot, vacant lot. And just getting access to that property to build this house is going to be a major ordeal because it's only about 10 foot wide. It's probably 250 feet long. And she already has erosion problems with this gravel driveway. So with concrete trucks, delivery trucks, pickup trucks going in and out of there every day, it's going to cause a real problem for them. You know, so doing that, how do we look out for these people with this gravel driveway to ensure that it's maintained And like I said, a concrete truck will probably straddle this driveway. That's how narrow it is. So to bring this pressure on these two women that live here, is going to be a big concern of mine because they're neighbors of mine. And I'm here in their behalf. And like I said, I'd like to see a new house there, but this is a major development. I mean, it's going to have a pool, it's going to have a freestanding garage, it's going to have a house. I mean, this is a major thing. This is not just a 1,500 square foot house. This thing's going to probably take 16, 18 months to build it, day in and day out, driving down this driveway. So I don't know if you can stop this person from building a house there because of the concern of the women there and access to the property. I don't know if you can or not. But this needs to be taken into consideration. I've listened to you all night talk about the concerns of the city, the growth, the controls that we have. And here's a prime example of one person that's going to be experiencing this for 15 months to 2 years. Does the city come in and pave this road and widen it and put the proper sewer amendments to it to protect her from all the erosions that she has all the time? I mean, is that something that the city does? And I think you ought to go look at it. You got plenty of time. Just go and just say, hey, is this the proper thing to do here? Like I said, I don't know if you can overrule it or not. But these people need to be protected in some manner. So I wish you'd take that into consideration before this thing goes too far. We already have a problem. Well, we're only supposed to talk on the thing that's there, so I'm not going to bring anything else up. But I really think you ought to have the consideration to look at that and see what your thoughts are.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, sir. Hey, Jackie, have we looked at the property? Have we been on it?
So we've been out there to look at the site, just to take pictures and everything else, but walking the property, no, I don't think any that I know of, unless engineering's been out there. That's possible, but I can't answer for them since they're not here this evening. We've been out there to take photos and everything else at the site, but we haven't really walked the property.
Any thoughts on how you would address kind of Ernie's questions there?
So it has actually been through the Atlanta Regional Commission, just to answer that question. So it had to be submitted here. As it goes through the process, it's looked at for erosion control. That has to be signed and stamped, approved before it goes down to the ARC. Once it's sent down to the ARC, all the different agencies down there look at it for a review period as well. And then once they indicate that's closed, if they find it consistent with the plan, they list it as consistent. So that's what ARC has done. If it's approved by the mayor and council this evening, the next steps that the applicant would take would be to submit for their land disturbance permit application, which means including stormwater. They'd have to handle that. Any type of erosion control and everything else would still have to meet this. They're also subject to the numbers that are on this plan here for the two categories. Those are the numbers that were approved with the project. They can't go over those impervious and clearing amounts. So all that would have to be submitted on the plan that comes into the city. So let's just, as I said, the next step would be a land disturbance permit application form, which would include all that information. It would also get sent around to all the different departments for their review and approval. If transportation has some comments, they might have something related to that. I can't answer if they would update the roads or anything like that. And then also the building permit application would have to be submitted as well. But that's up to the mayor and council if you choose to approve this item this evening.
Steve, do you have any thoughts on some of the questions were brought up?
Yes, this is the first step in a multi-step process, like Jackie's saying. The first step is to get the ARC to approve the actual impacts to the ARC corridor, and one of the furthest ends of the ARC corridor. The next step is to engage the site engineering dealing with the stormwater, the access, delivery of materials, and all of the different things that go into that for your laydown area. So we're in step one of probably a 5-step process.
Have you heard any concerns from the two ladies? Have you guys talked to them? And
No, not currently, we have not. But again, like I said, this is the first step, so when we get deeper into this and we actually have building footprints, final grades, and the actual impacts, I think we would absolutely reach out. I wouldn't want to do it now because I don't have enough to really show them.
Jackie, if we pass this tonight, does it bind our hands from being able to solve it? Let's say we discover that there's impact to the neighbors that we're not happy with down the road. Are we bound by tonight's decision?
So if you approve this evening, the project is bound by those numbers. The city still has to deal with approving the land disturbance permit and the building permit. So if they feel that there's some problems or concerns with,
But those are administrative issues.
yes, they are. So the only thing you're approving here this evening technically are the numbers on the plan for an approval of house.
Is this the last chance really for the electeds to speak?
Yes,
It
this
is,
is.
isn't it? I was afraid you were going to
So
say
if
that.
you wanted to, if you needed to see further, then you have that opportunity you could defer the item. I've never seen a MRPA deferred before. They're normally a standard for just a single family house. But, if you needed to see more information.
Could we in 2 weeks have enough information in front of the council to give the council comfort on whether or not it was going to impact these ladies? Could we do that in 2 weeks?
Sure, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking for.
Well, concern's been raised that
Right.
there might be adverse impact to the neighbors.
Right.
Right? And I want to find out what the city's position on that is. Can it be remedied? Does it need to be remedied?
Right.
Kind of outside the ARC guidelines. I just want to find out, like, from a resident perspective, hey, we already brought up some concerns, and I want to make sure we can answer those concerns. It doesn't sound like we can do that tonight, from what I'm hearing.
I mean, if we want
Councilman Hall?
to make as a condition of the application that there's proof that there's a meeting of that.
So I have a clarifying question. MRPA is an approval for disturbing a certain amount of land and making sure that that doesn't impact the river corridor. And what they've done is gone and done all those calculations and basically said, if this were to happen, you could do it in this place because it's not going to cause X amount of runoff into the river. So
Correct.
our process would deal with stormwater, with access and all of that.
I hear you, 100%. I'm just
just
saying.
clarifying
there's
from my
only
own-
if there's a chance that you can actually, let's say this creates a problem for a couple of residents, right? Unbeknownst to us, unbeknownst through the approval process, unbeknownst through this incredible, beautiful, elegant bureaucracy. And it does create a problem. I'm just saying, and this is if there's a chance for us that if it needs to be remedied, shouldn't we take a look at it? And if it costs us 2 weeks, is that an issue to anybody? I guess is what I'm asking. Like, for us to look 2 weeks to say, hey, if there's an issue there, let's see if we can remedy it.
After talking with Stormwater, 2 weeks would not be enough because technically we'd basically have to have this remedied and put back on an agenda in a week. So, or ready to go next week for the following week.
That's
So we would need 4 weeks.
4 weeks, thank you. Yes, sir, Councilmember Sells?
I guess, is this gravel road by easement, or is it an actual road, or is it, what are we talking about here?
It's hard to say whether it's a prescriptive right-of-way or an actual easement. I don't have any title work on the property currently.
I
but
see.
It shows up on the city maps as.
But it's clearly not a Roswell road, correct? It's not a Roswell DOT road.
I believe Roswell DOT may have jurisdiction over that.
Yeah,
There's a
Brian?
head shaking no over there.
They don't know. It's okay. They don't, and I get it. Yes, Sarah? Councilmember Beeson?
This is a clarifying question, and I'm not sure if it's for Jackie or if it's for City Attorney David Davidson. Based off the parameters of the item tonight, is mayor and council's responsibility to vote on this within the parameters of the Metropolitan River Protection Act, the MRPA, Or is it, to Mayor Wilson's point, the singular end-all be-all of a mayor and council or elected body being able to weigh in on the development of this property? Because my understanding on my end is it's purely from the MERPA standpoint, which is it goes to the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is the ARC, who oversees the implementation of the MERPA, which has been around since like for 50 years now. They say it looks good by us as long as it meets these specs. We just say yes or no related to these specs. It doesn't have anything to do with the road use, the stormwater. That comes later. Is that my understanding?
So because this is just a MERPA approval, then that's just saying, yes, the ARC has looked at it and the council is signing off on the MERPA approval. However, there could be development problems here if we don't even know if this is a city road that leads to this property or if it's a private drive. We don't know, and the applicant doesn't know right now. So there will be other issues, and I don't know if a month.
I was gonna say, is this a forum for these issues, or do those issues get remedied through staff processes in the future?
Yeah, so it would normally be done through the staff process, but if council wants to delay for a month and try to figure out if there are issues, there might not be any issues. That's part of the problem. But for the MERPA approval, that's just basically, here's your impervious.
It's impervious surfaces and percentage of that surface within the confines of this 2,000, 1,500, I'm making up numbers, the square footage, 2,000 square feet within the river corridor.
Thank you. I saw the gentleman, the good-looking gentleman in the back with the black shirt, raised his hand a long time ago. Yes.
Where's the microphone?
Yes, sir, you're right there. You stand right there and it's good. Welcome, sir.
I'm Roberto Paredes. I own the property that abuts to basically to the bottom of this parcel. And I developed, in conjunction with partners, the property that I own as well as the property that Ernie lives on, and had to go through the process of getting ARC reviews, engineer hydrology studies, because we had to update the designations of the vulnerability zones were really done, I think, in the 70s. And they exist in maps that you sort of kind of have to guess as to what that line really is or exactly where it resides. We had to actually survey that particular line and not just blow up an image and trace it and say that's a designated zone C or D. So that would be my first concern as to the actual location of those zones. When we were doing this project, we researched the Brown Drive is actually a historic access lane that the city owns, but it was not a dedicated right-of-way. It's remained in that capacity for many, many years, as far as I know. And if you look there's several photos in the community development of the historic Roswell. This was a lane where I believe it was the Union troops, or maybe it was Southern troops, to access the river, to cross it. So it's part of the sort of historic chain of events that are related to the war, and that Roswell is very proud to observe. So even to the extent that this whole area is really part of the river corridor, there is no curb and gutter on any of the streets there. They're all fairly narrow, and I spent quite a bit of money in order to introduce some kind of drainage control by building basically a rubble apron and curb so that water could still drain and mitigate through the curb and the gutter. So it's a very sensitive area. And and if you go there, it has a certain character. I believe that some of the housing for the mill was actually in this area here. So I'm not opposed to the building of a home in this particular site. I just want to make sure that it's done correctly, that I had to navigate many, many hoops in order to build my house. And I want to make sure that whoever is developing this piece of property adheres strictly to, once those zones are actually surveyed, that the amount of disturbance is controlled and the amount of impervious area is strictly adhered to. The last item is really, it's kind of a funky lot because it doesn't really have any frontage per the Unified Development Code. It doesn't really meet the criteria of a frontage. It's kind of it's really up to you to determine if this lot has a frontage or not, because it's really not a dedicated public right-of-way, and the zoning clearly states that all lots must have a frontage on a public right-of-way. So I think that's up to you guys to decide if this is really a legal lot to begin with. So with that, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's good that a house is being built there, but I think it needs to be done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, sir. Ms. Russell? Yes, ma'am. Janet? Thank you, sir.
Long before Roberto and Ernie got there, I was there. And these ladies were there. And we'd wave. This is a very old part of town for those of you that don't know where it is. It's a little tiny street, and by the way, it is not city-owned. It is called Brown Drive with a blue sign. I don't know if they have sewers or if they stayed on septic like I did when they installed sewers on our little neighborhood in the 80s. As Ernie remembers, I helped him when they wanted to put sidewalks in, and the city can't require you to put a sidewalk in where it doesn't connect to a public road. Also the sewer lines. Fulton County said he had to pay $5,000, and I reminded him that it was the same price it was grandfathered in the 80s, so they paid $50. I have a good memory for my neighborhood. I remember when Roberto built his house. It's beautiful. I remember when they built all of Connemara. That's where this is behind. But this is an old part of the town. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that the road is the distance from here to that bench, to the entrance of Brown Drive. There's a little tiny, tiny, tiny house, maybe 500 square feet, right at the entrance, behind the parking lot of Thousand Hills Coffee. That's what this is. This was all old. The house at the corner of my street is from 1850. He just completed the renovation. It is magnificent, isn't it, Ernie? I mean, it's magnificent. But the house on the other corner they built in 2023 has 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and it sold for $1.2 million, and it's straight down, and nobody could believe they ever built it. Nobody could believe it. We didn't know who anybody owned it. It had been vacant for 70 years. Our houses on my street were built in the 60s. So their houses built in the 40s, the 60s, the 30s, 2023s. It's a real neighborhood. It is not a subdivision. We do not have an HOA. This property at the end where these ladies live, if you're in the 2 Habitat for Humanity houses that are up Barrington Drive and you look down, you will see them, the property. That's where this is. So I'm having a hard time. I was driving through there and I looked down Brown Drive and I noticed one of these, signs that the city puts up, and I thought, well, I wonder what they're going to do there. That's interesting. But I can't imagine why anybody would want to put a swimming pool, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not surprised because you see, we're right by the new junction, which is putting in impervious surface the size half of a football field. And we were always told that there could be no impervious surface because we're in the river corridor. So I would challenge the developer or the owner, whoever wants to build this thing, of one, why they want to build it there, and two, the amount of property they're going to consume. It isn't a big place. It's really, really small. And I know all of you live in very contemporary modern developments, but this is the charm of the historic district. And I think you ought to regard that. And these ladies have lived there probably their whole lives. I don't really know them well except to wave, you know, the wave thing. But I think we need to respect the fact that these trucks are going to be going down a gravel road for a long time, and they're going to tear it up. By the way, that little road right there, Jones Drive, is 16 feet wide with no curbs. And 2 summers ago, a Kroger truck thought it got lost. Waze took it down Jones Drive, and it's a semicircle, and he tried to come up Church Street, and it tipped over and missed another Habitat house in our neighborhood by about 10 feet. And this is the same neighborhood that's like this, and one of those car-moving trucks that was delivering cars at the used car lot by our house thought he could get back up to Gainesville by cutting through there, and he bottomed out right at the corner of the entrance, and it took an hour and a half for a special tow truck to come from Gainesville to tow them off, which meant no police and no fire could get down there for almost 2 hours. That's the kind of neighborhood this is. So you have to make your consideration, and now's your chance to help out these people, because this neighborhood can't take it.
Thank you, Janet. Any other comments from Roswell residents on this particular issue that we're talking about? Okay, thanks. Council, I'm going to make a suggestion, obviously, and will to you specifically as the ComDev liaison, is I see no rush to judgment on time from my perspective based upon information, and it might serve this body well, particularly you as the lead, to spend perhaps 4 weeks along with the senior team to get up to speed and to be able to make full recommendation. I recognize that we're talking about MRPA, but we have a responsibility to our fellow residents. And if we don't know, and we can't sit up here, we don't have enough information, and we don't feel confident in the consequence, let's get to a place that we do. So well, I'm going to recommend, you guys can do what you want, but I'm going to recommend that we perhaps defer this item for two sessions.
Quick question. Ms. Dywell, is 2 sessions adequate? Is that what we need? 30 days, basically?
It should give us enough time. We'll need to talk with the applicant as to looking at what they believe they could provide for stormwater, and then also working with transportation related to the access.
Those guys are back there. Can we ask them now? Can we ask Brian and Jeff?
I already asked Mr. Watson. He indicated he couldn't do in 2 weeks. I did mention that. So I'm guessing, I'm going to go with the 30 days. If the applicant feels that they need a little more, we'll reach out to them prior to that meeting.
That's fair.
Okay. All right. Mayor Wilson, I have a motion.
Councilman Johnson has a question. Councilman Johnson.
If this property and road were not in the ARC, would this even come before us?
And look, can I say, what did you talk about the previous thing? The code, right? So that's a whole nother issue, right? Do you really want to unpack that?
No, I mean, here. Yeah. No, we have, in the previous meetings, deferred things that have come up to us, and I think the concerns that Ernie brought up are very valid about this road. And I don't love deferring things consistently, if that makes sense.
So let me address that, because I've heard that before, and you and I've talked about that.
Yeah.
So deferment is to do one thing. Is it to postpone making a decision because you're scared to make a decision, or is it postponing a decision because you need more information?
Right. And I guess my point is, I don't see, and I'm not going to speak on how everyone's going to vote, but I don't see how we can really not approve this, right? I mean, it's by right, correct? They can build this house, and the ARC has said that they are doing everything appropriately. So is it a deferment, just a month of time, and we're going to approve it anyways? Well, could we put conditions on it tonight that they have to put the road back to the standard that it is today?
I don't have enough information to put a condition on it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you may come back a month ago and say, like, I'm good, but I gotta put some conditions on it, right? Or you may come back and say, no conditions, original, da-da-da-da. I don't think we can answer, I don't see anybody in the room that's answering enough.
Can I ask Jackie a question?
100%.
Can we put conditions on a MRPA application?
I think it's going to be deferred. That would be helpful because then I could make a call.
Okay.
I've never seen it happen. However, there have been times when I'd have to take a look because I believe there was one time that there was a denial. But I'd have to look into the history on that as well.
Look, let's don't get focused on that. Let's just focus on gathering information, what we need to do to educate ourselves on making a decision, if you're good with that. So, you know, like, based on histrionic stakes. So, Willie?
Yes, sir.
Forgive me. Would you like to make a motion, sir?
Motion to defer to the September the 9th, 2024 Mayor and Council meeting for the item in question 2024-2144, address of 330 Brown Drive, Metropolitan River Protection Act.
Thanks, Will. There's been a motion made by Councilor Mortland to postpone this item for 4 weeks, seconded by Councilmember Hall. All in favor of the deferment for 4 weeks, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the deferment stands and will be readdressed in 4 weeks. Thank you very much, Pass. Yes, sir, Steve.
Just clarifying question, just so that I've got clear direction to go back to my client with.
Yes, sir.
What am I trying to solve for? What information are you needing?
I think you're not alone in this. We're trying to solve for it as well. There's questions on the floor that I think we've got to be able to answer, not just the applicant, but I think we have to answer questions as well. Brian, correct? Jeff, Sharon, Jeff? So I think, Jeff, Steve, I think we've got to answer some questions in conjunction to perhaps ask you some questions that we might need answers on. So Jackie, squared away. So if that's fair, we'll communicate through Jackie. Hey,
Okay.
Steve, these are
that's
some
fine.
things we might need some help on in terms of answering some questions.
Yeah.
And I think start with the original piece. I want to see if there's impact. Obviously, if there's neighbors there and it's going to impact them adversely, we need to address that, obviously. Right.
And then I'll meet anybody out in the lobby after this, just to get names and numbers, and we can set up meetings if we need to.
Perfect. Will Mortland will be leading the charge.
He's invited if he wants to be there.
He'll be there. Right, Willie? Thank you, sir. All right. And thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys, for your comments. All right, next on the agenda is economic development. Councilor Mortland, would you read the first item, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Item number 3, active professional service statements of work, presented by Sharon Izo.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an information item. We were requested to compile the active professional service contracts that the infrastructure team is currently using. We requested that our finance team compile these contracts for us as they track them for us. So this is a listing of the firms that we have the ability to contract with. They have been through our procurement process or a pre-qualification process and determined to possess the skills and qualifications that we need on a recurring basis to do our work. The kinds of things that we call on them to do are field topographic surveys, geotechnical evaluations, studies, analyses, design, construction management. These all allow us to meet our regulatory requirements as well as executing our capital improvement program, including our $180 million of bond program. These folks work with us to basically scale up and address these things in a timely way. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that.
Would you like to put this in layman's, Sharon, would you like to put this in layman's language?
Sure, so these.
Sorry, I don't mean that, but I don't think, why do you have the EPW RDOT active professional services contracts before this body tonight?
So these are our master services contracts that we use on an ongoing and recurring basis, very similar to the contract we're gonna discuss here next. Daryl's gonna be providing a quarterly update on some of the work that is being done through the SEER contract for economic development. And these are very similar style contracts where we are looking to have this kind of expertise on call to us as we execute our work. So it's simply a listing that I'm able to provide to you.
Let me see if I get this here. Does council have any thoughts, comments, or questions for Sharon? It's in the book. Thank you, sir. All right, so no thoughts, comments, or questions from council? All right, so I just want to make sure I'm good. I see, wait a minute, I see, how many vendors do I see here? These are consultants, are they not, and engineers?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I did not count them all up, and this is what we had on the day that they pulled them. I know there are some that are currently in contracting and will be adding to this list and replacing others. You see some of them, some of the expiration dates are coming due, and we replace folks as they roll off.
So Barge Design Solutions, you had a total available contract of $3 million. Columbia Engineering Service, you had a contract for $3 million, a total contract for $3 million. Engineering Strategies, you had a contract for $3 million. Hazen and Sawyer, you had a contract for $3 million. ECS Southeast, you had a contract for $3 million. Brown and Codwell, a contract for $3 million. United Consulting Group, $3 million. Black and VTech Corporation, $3 million. WK Dixon, $3 million. Burns and McDonald Engineering, $3 million. Geosyntech Consultants, $3 million. RZT, looks like $88,878. Integrated Science and Engineering, $36,000. Jacobs Engineering, $4.5 million. Jacobs Project Management, $5.5 million. ECS Southeast, $1 million. Then you've got some additional vendors down below. You've got, looks like Atkins North America on the T-Splost, $981,500. Michael Baker Jr., $5 million. Grisham Smith and Partners, $5 million. KCI Technologies, $5 million. Barge Design Solutions, $5 million. Venice Hangen Bruslin, $5 million. Terracer Mark Land Surveying, $5 million. Surveying and Mapping, $5 million. NVS Engineers and Consultants, $5 million. Are there any more on here? That's that it?
That is the list for the infrastructure team. And what that allows us to do is issue individual task orders based on the budgets for individual projects. And those amounts that you just called out are the upset limits, the total value of the contract.
All right, so do we have any other active professional services contracts in the city?
I only asked them to pull the infrastructure ones, so I expect there probably are some other ones, but this is the bulk of the ones that we have.
So just so we let our residents, our fellow residents know, let's know all the active professional services contracts that are out there, what they are. I love how you provided this format. Hopefully everybody at home can see this, obviously can access it. So I'm gonna ask a dumb question. So why does the SEER contract come up next? Why does it continue to stand out as a sore thumb if you have this many vendors and contracts? I'm confused.
Sir, I can't answer that. I mean, this is common practice in my world. We don't hire a whole cadre of engineers and architects and folks with those specialties to execute these design contracts. We always use outside firms, and that is the way we work all the time.
Is there something?
I think this is
there something like, I keep seeing these news stories from some local newspaper, it keeps writing about SEER. Is there some nefarious activity going on in the city? Is there some corruption or money handling, or why is SEER, because if it's this common, by the way, you worked at Sandy Springs beforehand, didn't you?
I did, sir.
Is this common amongst cities of our size?
Absolutely.
Okay. So is there, and again, I'm trying to, but why is SEER standing out on these professional services contracts?
I can't say. I don't
Just
know.
fascinated. Okay. Thank you for Councilor Sells?
All of these came before council, I assume, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Because of the size. And are these closed-in awards, or are these per annum, generally speaking?
I'm sorry, I'm not following the question.
Is this a per annum amount, or is this a closed-in contract?
This, and I'm gonna look back at my team here. Are these it's the full year? Yeah. So in other words, if it's a 3-year contract, it's $3 million, $1 million per year, correct? Thank you. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
5 year, and just for everyone else, so the ones for transportation that you see that are the $5 million, that's $5 million, that's $1 million a year for a total of 5 years.
Right. And are we providing this council and the citizens like an update of how much we paid each one of these contracts like we're doing SEER?
We haven't been asked to do that in the past. I mean, this is a snapshot in time. But no, we have never been asked to do that. No, sir, never been asked to do that the way we're being asked to on the SEER contract.
Okay. And I appreciate that because people have questions about it, so I appreciate that. But it's not too dissimilar what SEER is doing to what Jacobs is doing under the program management, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, certainly, they're bringing to bear expertise that we do not have within the city and our employ, and that's exactly why we use these contracts that way.
Thank you, Councilor Marcells. Thank you, Sharon. Council, any additional thoughts, comments, or questions on this matter at hand? Very good. Thank you. Are there any Roswell residents who'd like? Yes? Yes, ma'am. Sarah, sorry. Sorry, Sarah. Forgive me.
I was just going to say, the reason why we're doing this SEER as a standalone is I believe it was a contract requirement for the MSA per Councilmember Sell's recommendation so that we could constantly have those updates. So I think those are only in there because they were requested by Mayor and Council. But that being said, too, the totals on all these contracts, that's just the cap on those contracts that you recapped. The expended total on most of these, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Izo, none of these have exceeded more than 20% of their contract totals. Is that correct?
You've done the math on that.
Sorry,
so
I'm
you're
just
calling me out on that.
quick glancing, and you.
But yes, typically we don't approach that upper limit. It's there, it's available to us, but of course we need to budget for that. So if we're going to spend that money, that comes through you as well at certain thresholds, and so the budget has to be available to spend that. Certainly, if we added up all of these upset limits, we don't spend that much money on these professional services. So we would I see us reaching that maximum.
Is that true on, sorry, because I'm going to follow up on that. Is that going to be true with Jacobs Engineering Group and Jacobs Project Management? You're going to be well above that threshold, are you not?
Yeah, we're going to be below that threshold, yes.
I mean, you're going to be well above the 20% threshold.
Above that, yes.
You're going to be like well above that.
Yeah, well, we are for the beginning of it, and I think we have talked about that as we stand up our group. There was a tremendous amount of effort that needed to be expended in order to get our CIP bond program up and running, and so we knew there was going to be a significant amount of expenditure up front.
How do you make decisions? How do you guys make decisions to use these various vendors? Just kind of quick snapshot, so people, unfamiliar
It's definitely based on that qualification process we go through. It's a qualification-based selection. At that point, we become familiar with the teams, with the resumes, who they have available to do the type of work they have done for other cities and other municipalities and even private clients that is directly applicable to the project that we are looking to do.
But you have a level of knowledge and intimate knowledge and familiarity with the people that you're working with to make a decision to engage them in professional services, correct?
Absolutely. And when we have a project in front of us, oftentimes we'll talk to more than one of these firms to determine which group is in the best position to give us the best product, whether it's the qualifications of the staff they have available to work, and also the timeliness that they'd be able to deliver the product to us. We want to understand that as we're committing to a task order with one of these firms, that they're able to commit the resources that we need within the time frame.
Do you have statement of works with every one of these vendors?
No, I think all except for, I think I saw one that we haven't done any work with. If I'm not mistaken, one or two. You see there's a couple, you can see under expended total, there are a handful of them that it's zeroed out, which just means that we haven't had a project that aligns with their expertise, or they didn't have the resources available when we needed it, so.
So like, for example, if you awarded a bid award date on June of 28th of 2021, and you've extended it through August the 11th of 2024, what's the process to extend that vendor going forward?
Okay, so we can do that administratively, and the reason we did that was that those contracts were 3-year contracts, and we were going through a procurement process to basically vet a whole new field of firms to fill those needs. A lot of these firms competed again, and a lot of them got a new award. Those are the contracts that I'm talking about that are actually going through the official process. They've already been approved by our mayor and council, and they're in contracting, which is simply getting all the signatures, getting the certificates of insurance, all of those things. So there'll be a group of folks that are coming on that have 24 contracts that'll go through 27? 29. So there'll be 5-year contracts this time around, the engineering services.
What is, just because I want you to educate me, Sharon, on this. So what's different about the SEER contract versus these contracts?
You know, I can only guess that perhaps it's because it's economic development versus these typical construction projects that people are more accustomed to seeing, whether it be bridge work or road work or a new water line. I think our constituency has become accustomed to seeing those, and the economic development approach that we have been taking here over the last few years with an aggressive economic development strategy is something new.
Very good, thank you, that's helpful. Councilmember Sells?
Yeah, as the, I guess the crafter of the reporting, I would say the reason that I felt like that was appropriate is because there had been questions that I felt were unfair about the work that is being done, and the best thing we could do is say, well, here's the complete list. And as I think about that list, and we're going to see that in a minute, of course, we've all seen it in advance. Do we pay these people timely?
Yes, we do. They submit invoices on a 30-day basis. We review them, and so basically we get a monthly invoice from them. We oftentimes ask for a monthly report because we want to know what the invoice represents, and we want to verify that the work has been done and we've received the deliverables and the invoice is appropriate. And then our team signs off on it and goes into our back into finance for them to issue that payment.
So it could be that the 6 or 8 month time lag with the SEER contract led to the conversation about upfront payment on a particular contract, statement of work that we looked at recently. Is that possible? The answer is yes, that's okay.
Yes, okay.
But that's why we're doing that, because you're exactly right. This is economic development. We are going after new employers. We're doing this in a different way, and that's got people asking legitimate and perfectly fine questions. And we are doing everything we can to make sure that everybody sees every dollar that's spent, every dollar that's committed under that contract. So I appreciate you bringing this. Thank you.
Alan, I think that's a good point, and I appreciate your push for transparency. And I'll just say, because I can't help myself, I question like very simple questions, and everybody's available at the City of Roswell, both electeds and staff. And I'm always confused why, if this is a normal process, why a local newspaper is unable to figure this out or even ask the questions if they have some questions. But to lead to some conclusion that there's something sinister going on is highly responsible for any member of the press to engage in. I can understand sometimes how a resident might come to a conclusion because they're not fully apprised of this process, and this is fully apprising them. Like, hey, tell me about this process. Everybody's open game, fair game on questions. But for the press to engage in it and to engage in suggesting sinister activity is highly irresponsible, and I dare say not doing their job in terms of coming asking simple questions. And to suggest public distrust and suggest it is not, it's not a good thing. So anyway, thank you, Sharon. Any thoughts from any Roswell residents? Yes.
Plan again. What is different about SEER? Everything is different about SEER. I have never heard any comments from mayor and council about Black and Veatch Corporation or, let's see, Integrated Science and Engineering or Jacobs Engineering Group. I had to take a picture of it and zoom it in because, yeah. I've never heard anything like y'all heap praise upon Sear and Peter Sorkhoff. It's strange, and that's why you're getting a strange reaction. Y'all heap praise on him and say how wonderful they are, and I don't understand why they were chosen. It's a tiny firm, and they have none of the specialists that are needed for any of these projects they all have planned. That I know it's taken 6,000 hours of work to do, but it causes concern when we see LinkedIn or Indeed posts for parking specialists, when we see Indeed posts for all the things that we've hired them to do. This is why we question it, because it's strange. It is not normal. You want to know why? I mean, that's why. There is nothing normal about this. I have heard, I mean, the things that I have heard, you'd think that he hung the moon and the stars. And that is strange, and that is why it's different, and that is why everybody is taking it apart with a fine-tooth comb. It's weird.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you for your comments very much. Any other Roswell residents who would like to weigh in? Thank you so much.
No, but a council member would.
Councilmember Sells. Yes, sir. I'll bring it back to council.
Thank you. Yeah. You certainly heard their name when we voted on these contracts. And part of the reason that you're hearing about SEER is because it's actively brought to this council specifically to deal with these economic opportunities. That's what we're doing. As far as, you know, I've heard several people say something about the fact that there's an Indeed posting for a specialist. So we recently contracted SEER to do a parking study. So he hired someone to go count parking spaces. And to think that we're marking that up, but this is someone to actually go physically do work. This is not the intellectual property that we're talking about. This is just simply a clerical level person added to the team. I don't think that's unusual at all. I don't think it's weird at all. And the way professional firms like this work, especially in this space, this is not engineering. So as someone with an investment banking background, what we're hiring largely is the Rolodex of that person. That means that they can bring us these opportunities. They have Gary Bettman on speed dial. They have these kinds of people that we're trying to bring these jobs to Roswell on their cell phone, and they can get to them. That's what you're paying for. And what we hope to do soon is to see some of these on a success fee basis, where we say, we want to close this on these terms, and you get paid this much, because that way the city wins, and we have all the attention that we need. But I don't think this is strange at all. This is very, very common in the industry I come from. I believe other council people could say the same thing.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Councilmember Hall.
Yes, working for a consulting firm, this is very standard, something we see all the time, and I realize that just perhaps if you're not in this industry, it may seem unusual, but this contract is pretty standard, the work is standard, it's about deliverables, and that's how people are measured. If deliverables aren't produced or not produced to our standards, then those contracts don't continue. And that's basically the way the consulting world works. So the proof is in the pudding, as they say, and we're getting excited that we're going to be in a position to be able to disclose some of these deliverables that we have been working on. So that's basically my piece.
Thank you, Christine. Any other thoughts from council? Thank you very much. All right, I believe there is this is a active professional service statements of work presented by Deputy City Administrator Sharon Izzo, and there is no further action required at this time, so Will, thank you for the presentation. Would you read the last item under economic development? Thank you, Sharon.
Last item under the economic development is SEER Master Services Agreement Quarterly Report presented by Mr. Darrell Conley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Tonight I am presenting a quarterly report on the SEER World Master Services Agreement for the period May through July 2024. So to refresh your memory, Mayor and Council approved the SEER contract back in April 22nd, 2024. We entered into the Master Services Agreement on May 7th. It's for economic development consulting. It's a 5-year term. Contract amount is $2 million every year. The city administrator has the authority of up to $100,000 to enter into task orders. We selected SEER through an extensive RFQ process. We awarded them. It was an independent staff, looked at all the proposals. They had the best proposal. They put together a team of people, team of firms. I think there were 15 or 16 different firms that they included in their proposal. So it was very, very comprehensive. We've agreed to come back to you on a quarterly basis to report on how much money has been spent, what we spent it on, and that's what this report is. So this is a long list of items that are covered in the Master Service Agreement. There are really 4 different buckets. First one is economic development strategy. It includes things like looking at infrastructure and parking management, includes business development and recruitment, developing economic development tools and incentives. The second bucket is redevelopment planning and implementation. So in that bucket, you've got master planning, there's feasibility studies, there's economic impact analyses, and then the third bucket is this public-private partnerships, so helping us look at different transactions, transaction structuring, looking at doing some real estate negotiation support. And the last one is community engagement, which would include branding and marketing, communications and media strategies. So as I mentioned, SEER put together this team of 16 different firms that cover all of these different items. We've entered into 3 scopes of work thus far. The first one is economic development strategy and enterprise land planning and acquisition. That was approved on 4/22/24. That was the date that we entered in, that Mayor and Council approved. The Master Services Agreement was part of that package. The amount was $220,000. We've been invoiced a total of $103,673. There were 2 invoices covering May and June 2024. We've paid that $103,673, leaving a contract amount of $116,327 in that particular scope of work. We do have a budget contingency of 25% on that, which is $55,000. The items that have been covered with this $103,000, it includes, and this is very, very general, but sports and entertainment site and district development, developing economic development strategy. You heard a lot about that a couple of weeks ago, as well as a variety of real estate projects. The second scope of work is the outsourced chief operating officer. That was approved in June 10th, 2024. That was for an amount of $340,000. At this point in time, there's no amounts have been invoiced, so we still have a contract amount remaining of $340,000. There's no budget contingency there. And the third scope of work is the parking business model, which we talked a lot about in the last couple of weeks. That's developing a parking business model, business plan. So it includes data research, financial analysis, and financial modeling. The contract amount is $143,000. We've been invoiced and paid $50,050. That was paid up front. And then we've gotten a remaining contract amount of $92,950. This is going to be paid over a period of time. It's a 90-day process for them to complete their work. There is a budget contingency of 10% or $14,300. Summarizing everything, so out of the $2 million for this year, we've entered into scopes of work for $703,000. There's 3 scopes of work. We've paid SEER $153,722. At this point in time, we do not owe them anything, and the contract remaining is $1,297,000. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Darrell. Appreciate it very much, sir. Does council have any thoughts, comments, or questions for Economic Development Director Darrell Conley? Sarah, yes, ma'am.
Obviously, the scope of work number 3 is lump sum. Scope of work number 2 has not been engaged yet. Scope of work number 1, remind me, is that time and expense on that one, or is that lump sum as well?
That is based on hours.
Okay.
So there's a contract rate of, I believe it's $220 per hour, and they've spent a total of about 440 hours.
470, yeah. With that one, is it the same as Ms. Izo pointed out with the remaining professional services contract of having a required monthly report to be able to audit up against for those hours?
I'm sorry.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Izo. For the professional services contracts, you said that you required it's a 30-day submission. I'm so sorry, I made her walk from the back. Anything's better than those wooden pews. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding with the other professional services contracts for time and expense specifically, not lump sum, you said that they submit their invoices within 30 days, and as part of that, they are providing a monthly report.
That is at the discretion of the project manager on the project. Typically, all of my project managers, I request that they do that. It's good practice to do that. It isn't required by our contract to do that, but I always find it's good practice for the project manager because it's an excellent form of communication.
No, I love it. Yeah, it's FAR compliant. We do it with my firm.
Yeah.
Totally normal on the consultant side to be able to provide up against whatever invoices you've submitted, time and expense, the time being the timesheets of whatever project managers, employees, whoever submitted work on that contract. Is that part of that monthly report?
That's all. The invoice stands on its own, and what I'm always looking for is what the progress has been toward the deliverable and whether that looks consistent with what we were told when we had our proposal. Our proposal usually will show the level of effort that's anticipated for any individual deliverables. So not that we're going to split hairs, but sometimes, you don't want to see 50% of an invoice and you haven't received the first deliverable, which was to do at the 25% point, if you will. So that's how, it's a check and balance, and it's also just a good form of communication. That way, if anyone needs to know where we are in the project, we can quickly pull that up. But again, that's not a part of our contract. It's just the project manager's preference.
Okay. So, Mr. Connolly, is that standard preference for economic development?
In this particular contract, we've received 2 different invoices. We've had it broken down. I believe there's 5 or 6 different buckets. The majority of that is the economic development strategy and consulting. The other, that was about $66,000 over the 2-month period. The remaining amounts, I think, is about $30,000 for real estate projects. And then sports and entertainment is about $7,000. So we've been monitoring their work on these projects. And again, the bulk of this has been those meetings that we've had in developing the economic development strategies. So we've been tracking.
Got it. Thanks.
Sarah, thank you. Anything else? Okay, thanks. Council, any other thoughts, comments, questions for Darrell? Thank you. Any Roswell residents would like to weigh in on this? Kat, did you want to weigh on this? Okay. All right. Thanks so much. All right. Come bring it back to council for any final thoughts, comments, or questions. Councilmember Sells?
Yeah, thank you guys for putting this together, and I'm sure it'll get easier and we'll get better at it as we go forward. And so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, sir. Anything else from anybody? Thank you, Darrell, very much. Oh, Jeff. Yes, sir. Deputy City Administrator Jeff Leatherman.
Sorry, just wanted to make one point of clarification that the presentation that was included in the agenda item has a typo associated with it. We will amend that presentation and make sure that we have it clear for the record, consistent with what Daryl has presented here tonight. So just want to make that clarification.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Sharon. Daryl, thank you very much, sir. All right, this is simply a quarterly report. There's no action required from the council. At this point, we will move on to the city attorney's report. David Davidson, would you please read your item, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion for closure? A motion for closure by Councilmember David Johnson is seconded by Councilmember Sells. All those in favor of closure, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the motion for closure is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Being that there are no other items, this mayor and council meeting of August 12, 2024 is adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.